Today we're going to talk about how to create fake leather that looks realistic for your cosplays. You might avoid leather due to cost, lack of materials, or even for moral reasons, but simulating leather isn't as simple as just buying some faux leather fabric and using it. These are techniques that I used on my Siri cosplay, so if you want to see them in action, check out the photo gallery on my website linked in the description. First, materials. You'll need a pleather fabric to serve as your base. You can find plenty of textured vinyls in various colors at your local Joann Fabrics. If you're making a leather garment, like a corset, you won't need this next material, but if you're making something that needs the thickness of leather, such as Siri's armbands or a belt or a strap, you'll need craft foam. This stuff is usually 50 or 60 cents per sheet at your local craft store. You'll need a glue to connect the fabric and the foam. Hot glue will work fine. And finally, you'll need paint. You can use acrylic, but I prefer to use an actual leather paint for this since it retains flexibility and won't flake off if the piece bends too much. You can order Angelus leather paints online. If you want to do some cool, very visible detailing, I'd also recommend getting some embroidery floss and an embroidery needle. This is how I did all of the thread detailing on Siri's leather pieces. Now you're ready to get started. First, cut out your basic shape from craft foam. I'll just be making a little square for the purpose of illustrating the techniques. Next, you'll need to cut out a piece of vinyl that will cover your foam and have enough excess to wrap around the edges. When in doubt, err on the side of giving yourself too much fabric to work with. If both sides of the item will be visible, you will also need to cut out a second piece to cover the back. The second piece does not need excess fabric. It can be the same size as your foam piece. Next, glue down the vinyl. Two things to keep in mind here when using hot glue. First, heat can disintegrate or warp foam, so go easy and don't leave your glue gun too close to the foam for too long. Second, if you don't work quickly, hot glue can dry lumpy. Do your gluing in small sections and smooth it immediately to try and prevent lumps. You could also just use a different glue, like tacky glue or E6000 maybe, but I'm impatient and I don't like waiting for things to dry. It's really up to you which type of inconvenience you prefer. When your foam is all wrapped in pleather, it should already look pretty good. In fact, if you're making a cartoon character or something, you might be able to stop here. But realistic leather goods aren't all one neat, uniform color, especially if they've been worn and used a lot, like I'm sure Siri's garments and accessories would be after years of traveling and fighting monsters. So it's time for paint. The first step of distressing with paint is thinking about where dirt and grime would naturally collect on the item based on how it's worn or used. In general, that means at the edges or around seams or folds. If you're going to add an embroidered seam, you'll want to do your weathering with that in mind. For the purpose of demonstration, I'm going to add a seam straight down the middle of this square. Now you can use a paintbrush or sponge to blotch on paint in the areas you want darkened. Then blend it out. If you have too much paint, you can blot some of it off with a paper towel. In general, this should be a little messy and uneven, so don't put too much pressure on yourself to make it perfect. If your first coat isn't enough, you can let it dry and come in again with a darker one. The Angelus leather paints dry pretty quickly, which can be both a blessing and a curse. To avoid overdoing it, start small and build up the layers as you go, based on how you like the look so far. When it's all painted and dried, it's time to add decorative stitching if you want. Stitching through the hot glue can be a pain, but the foam and vinyl themselves should be very easy to sew through. Ta-da! Your weird, useless leather square is finished. Here are some examples of leather goods from my Siri cosplay that I created using these methods. Good luck making your own fake leather.